Welcome, everybody. Hi, I'm Jackie Morey. Welcome to the 21st Century Legacy Letters virtual book club meeting. Today, we are discussing chapter 4 of this incredible book. This is a transformational book, as far as I'm concerned. We're talking about chapter 4, which the title of chapter 4 is The Vulnerability Armor. And I get the honor of co hosting this virtual club meeting with Dr. Becky Slaybaugh, Tanisha Williams, and Steve Garvin. And we're expecting Steve and Tanisha to log on shortly, but let's dive in, okay? Because I want to make sure that we honor you and your time. In chapter 4, I'm just going to give you the overview because I want Dr. Becky, Tanisha, and Steve to share their takeaways, their stories, and their actionable ideas. In chapter 4, Brene Brown just completely shocks me right off the bat. Here's the paradox, even in the, I think it was the first or second paragraph. The paradox, she says, vulnerability is the last thing I want you to see in me, but the first thing I look for in you. Isn't that amazing? I thought, holy smokes, that is so true. It's the last thing I want you to see in me, but the first thing I look for in you. And so, folks, if you haven't gotten this book, please do, because I am changing so much. And I'm sure all of my co hosts, Dr. Becky, Tanisha, and Steve, are also changing by leaps and bounds because, according to the Facebook posts that they've been posting, they have been experiencing change, real change. So, let me go over the overview of the chapter and then I'll allow my co hosts, my special co hosts, to share their takeaways. In chapter 4, Brene Brown talks about the enough mandate. What does that mean? Well, she said that there are three strategies that those who are wholehearted have when they have already embodied or when they are in the more in the process of embodying the enough mandate. And what is the enough mandate? Well, first of all, the first strategy that they want to embody is I am enough, and practicing not just saying it in our minds, but actually believing it in whatever situation we find ourselves that make us feel vulnerable, saying I am enough. Secondly, the second strategy is I've had enough. What does that mean? Well, she says that folks who are wholehearted, they set boundaries versus playing the comparison game, and they set good boundaries, healthy boundaries versus one upping another person, right? So that's the second strategy of the enough mandate. The third strategy in the enough mandate is letting myself be seen enough. What does that mean? Letting myself be seen enough. Yes, maybe I'll share more with you about, maybe my failures, my weaknesses, my gaps, things that have happened to me. But it also means, and I'm just going to read a snippet of it, it means showing up, being present. It means taking risks. Do I take risks when I'm in a large crowd? Do I take risks when I am with other people that I don't necessarily know as well, right? So it means engagement versus disengagement. So that is what the third strategy is, letting myself be seen enough, and that's the enough mandate. Then she goes through two major parts of chapter 4. The first part is the common vulnerability shields. My goodness, this was just so eye opening and jaw dropping for me because she talks about three different things, which are foreboding joy, perfectionism, and numbing. And those are the shields that typically most people wear, right? And then in the latter part of the chapter, and this is for next week, she talks about the less frequented shelves in the armory. So these are also shields similar to foreboding joy, perfectionism, and numbing. These are all shields, but these are less frequently used shields. But they are Viking or victim, letting it all hang out, floodlighting. Then there's smash and grab, serpentining, cynicism, criticism, cool, and cruelty. So those are the less frequented shelves in the armory. And this is what we're going to discuss next week. This week, we're talking about the first part of chapter 4. And I want to focus a little bit on uh, foreboding joy. Foreboding joy is something that I believe that I was into a lot. I mean, and I won't explain it as much because I'm sure Dr. Becky or Steve or Tanisha will want to get into that. But here's what I didn't even know that this is the antidote, and because I've been practicing this antidote, that I do not do, or I do not apply or put on this shield of foreboding joy as often as I used to. And what is the antidote to this shield of foreboding joy? Well, according to Brene Brown, the antidote is daring greatly. Practicing gratitude is the antidote to foreboding joy. And she's found in all her research of thousands and thousands of individuals that those who are the most wholehearted, they have they have this practice of gratitude, right? And they use practicing gratitude as the antidote to foreboding joy. So they have gratitude journals, others have gratitude jars, and even others have family gratitude rituals. And this one we're practicing. I have in my journal, I write down in my journal at least 3 things every day that I'm grateful for. And then when I have the weekly live show on Wednesdays, the 21st Century Legacy Letters show, I do my best to cultivate an attitude of gratitude by holding up this card, and I engage from the get go everyone who is attending live and asking them to share with everyone, share with me and my featured guest and everyone in live with us in the audience what they're grateful for. I even ask them to share a win so that we can celebrate. And to me, that is practicing gratitude. It's cultivating an atmosphere of gratefulness. So, foreboding joy, I didn't even realize it, but that this is, I don't use that shield as often as I used to because of the practice of gratitude. But here's something that I have found that was eye opening to me that I need to really be aware of, and that is numbing. She says that numbing is not just drinking alcohol or doing drugs, not at all. Numbing can be anything from checking our emails long past the work day because we're trying to numb ourselves from facing maybe some kind of issue with our spouse, or an emotion with our that we maybe an angst that we have with a friend, or maybe some ill will that we're feeling or sensing with our parents, whatever it is. We do things to numb that pain, that discomfort, that dis-ease. And so for me, because I've noticed that, okay, what I do is, um, I'm going to be very vulnerable with you, is there are times when I feel this sense of uh, angst, especially with the recent occurrence of bullying in the school where my children, go to school. And so instead of writing down on my journal what I'm feeling, and I mean, of course, I email everyone with my, my husband and I email the principal and all that. We are always, sharing with them what's happened and so on and so forth, and they are taking actions. But in the meantime, I have these emotions that are in there just causing turmoil. So instead of me going to the Lord, or me continuing to share with my husband, or me writing, using emotional writing, I go to social media and I just use some time to numb my this angst that I feel on social media, right? So here's my actionable idea, and I'm going to start doing this because of what I've read in chapter 4. On my journal, I'm going to write down regularly my answer to my spirit care question. And she has a question that is going to care for your spirit and my spirit. It's going to nourish your spirit and my spirit. And here's the question. It's a kind of a long question. It's kind of two question. It's a two-part question. And here it is. And I'm going to start answering this question instead of numbing myself. Are my choices comforting and nourishing my spirit, or are they temporary reprieves from vulnerability and difficult emotions, ultimately diminishing my spirit? And then the second part of the question is, are my choices leading to my wholeheartedness, or do they leave me feeling empty and searching? So that is my actionable idea that I'm going to actually implement starting today when I write on my journal tonight, especially with the things that I feel are not yet fully resolved in that issue of bullying in our kids' school. So I'm going to just do that, and we're still in conversation with the principal, et cetera, et cetera. So now I want to turn over the the stage, the platform, to my good friend Dr. Becky, because I want to hear what Dr. Becky's takeaways are from chapter 4 of this book, Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. And the title again of the chapter is The Vulnerability Armor. Dr. Becky, how are you doing today? And welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for inviting me back. It's always an honor, Jackie, to be a part of the book club and what we're doing, and to see Steve here as well. Really, it's a great time for all of us to learn and grow. And I certainly was not expecting this kind of growth for myself personally, but my gosh, it's been quite insightful for me. And Jackie, I just want to tag on to what you shared about on the journaling or writing things down. And I want to agree with you on that. It's very comforting for me when I can write things down and journal. And I can be real. There's no one around judging me, discerning me. It's I just pour my heart out, and I pour it out to my Lord, to my Abba Father. And there's a healing in that, and as well. So and it also the healing develops a comfort and a joy. And so it's like a replacement of the angst that we have, or whatever our situations are that we're going through. And we're not looking at culture, we're not looking at anything but just who we are in that moment and acknowledging that. So I want to tag on acknowledgement. Just where you are, you're enough. And Brene talks about it. You're enough. Just where you are, you're enough. So with that, I want to tag on to one of the things that really highlighted for me, because my family is we're really, perfectionism is something that, my gosh, it's in the families, isn't it? So what does Brene say about that, as far as in the families or in the culture that we're living in? Perfectionism is not the path that leads us to our gifts and to our sense of purpose. It's the hazardous detour. So we can call it a hazardous detour. We can call it a sabotage, or it can actually even be numbing as well. Because we're not looking for how we can grow. We think that if it's a mistake, we're terrible. And we move in, and that opens up all the stuff with fear and all of those other horrible emotions. So perfectionism is not the same, though. And this is where I think even the business world needs to hear this. It's not the same as striving for excellence or a healthy achievement or growth. I found that very much so when I was working in executive offices. I found that no one's perfect. You're in a very busy place, and you do the best that you can. So, and you work with what you have. Again, back to you're enough. So perfectionism at its core, this was interesting, you guys, which I thought is about you're trying to earn approval. I thought, wow, that's good insight that Brene gave, So anyway, so my perfectionism, I put it in all different colors. I didn't make it all nice and pretty. I did that on purpose. I want you guys to see that. So what does that mean? So if we were to move forward quickly, I'm going to talk about, so what happens? So you're in perfectionism mode. I say, timeout. We need a timeout. And then Brene talks about a 20-minute walk that we can do is better than a 4-mile run that we don't do. The imperfect book that gets published is better than the perfect book that never leaves the computer. I thought that was a good point. The dinner party of takeout Chinese food is better than the elegant dinner that we're never going to host. So, timeout. So what does timeout mean? Timeout would mean, I look at it as a traffic light. You just stop and do a timeout, and then you go into the yellow light, and let's pause. Let's think about this. Perspective. And then for the green light, now move forward. Now, when I worked in the office, I did that a lot, where I would literally put my head on my desk because I'd be so overwhelmed, but that was my time out. Then I'd get up, go for a walk. So what Brene's saying is I did my time out just to get my perspective, what I needed to be doing. So for those that are working and you can't just go lie down or journal, but go take a short walk and just get refocused. I want to just give you an example, and I'm almost done here. Wholeheartedness. So then that leaves us to wholeheartedness. Learning how, Brene talks about learning how to actually feel their feelings, staying mindful about numbing behaviors, and learning how to lean into the discomfort or hard motions. Now, that's rough, but on the other hand, you're not numbing. You're moving in and you're looking at it, and when you're there, it's 9 times out of 10, it's not as bad as you think. You're actually gonna be fine. So how you treat others, I didn't get this on a card, is how you treat yourself. So be nice to yourself. Be nice. It's okay to be nice. And true humility is not thinking less of yourself, but rather thinking of yourself less. So I think there's a bridge between perfection and humility. So I'm going to leave you with you may think you are perfect, but you really aren't. And she shared that. And quick example I have of a family member. That's where you can get lots of good learning from. At least my family down in Texas. They're very Southern family. So these relatives, we were sitting down and having dinner with them, and this one person shared to the spouse, saying, your hair's a mess, you need to, just shame. They're Southern folks, they're, it's got to be perfect. How dare you? And my husband Gary and I noticed as she was saying that, she had on this really big wig, and it was tilted. It was like this. So we're sitting here looking at her say, be perfect, with her crooked wig. And we're trying to get this, trying to, how do you work with that? So, so I think you may think you're perfect, but you're not. And it's okay. There's enough. That's my takeaway as well. Thank you.
Wow. That is fantastic, Dr. Becky. Thank you. Thank you so much. Dr. Becky, the stories you share are just so life-giving, and they're funny, they're real, and I really appreciate you sharing and opening up things in your family and some of the things that have happened. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, I'm not sure if Tanisha is on camera yet, but I'd like to call first Steve so that Tanisha will get a chance to work on the camera issue, because I want to see Tanisha in all her glory. So Steve, share for just a few minutes what your takeaways are, and then maybe some actionable ideas, please.
Well, the first thing that I think that I'd like to share is just kind of actually in response to now with Dr. Becky, is that, when we're vulnerable, we give each other space to be real, to be who we are, and to, hang down, if you want to say that, that whereas if we put on this mantle of perfectionism, that's an awful heavy crown to put up on ourselves, and it doesn't, let us be who we really are. Room for other people to be who they are either. And again, and Brene Brown really models this really well. I mean, she's been doing this work for I don't know how many years now, but well over 15 years. For her, it's as much of a growth process as it is for the rest of us. That it's not this high and mighty, I'm perfect at being vulnerable. It's, I'm just as anybody else. And one of the things I like about her is she just has a great sense of humor too. When you mentioned earlier the 7 or the 8 different ways that we react, and one of them was the serpentining. I went and watched that it was just, funny that that example that she used. And I think it's just perfect, that opportunity to show up and be who we are. The other thing that I'm getting out of doing this that I didn't expect. Am I breaking up or?
That's me.
Like it's just a tad.
The other thing that I am getting out of it that I didn't expect was that, as you know, one of the things I do is art, and is how much being an artist really gives me opportunity to be vulnerable, to put out my images that I don't think are perfect, that to, show things that, that aren't necessarily stage. And by doing that, it gives me courage and freedom to continue to evolve and to grow as an artist and as a person, as an entrepreneur. I think it's just a great experience. So.
Excellent, excellent. And by the way, folks, if you haven't seen Steve's videos, I encourage you to join Steve's Facebook community. Steve, if you don't mind typing in the chat room the Facebook community URL.
Oh, sure.
And that way, those who want to join Steve Garvin's Facebook community, it's called Heart Centered Entrepreneurs, Playful and Creative. That way, you can see the videos that Steve just recorded, I think yesterday and the day before yesterday. And these are the different takeaways that Steve is getting from reading the book. Is that correct, Steve?
I mean, one of them was in response to something that I read greatly. Another was something that I read actually out of Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic. So it wasn't just specifically from Daring Greatly, but it is a great resource.
Got it. Okay. Awesome. So I'm going to let Steve type in the URL in the chat room, and I would love for Tanisha to unmute, and then, oh, Tanisha left the room for, I think Tanisha is resetting her computer. So anyway, does anybody have any questions? And maybe Joanne, maybe you have, if you've read any part of the book, we'd love to hear, or type in the chat room your comments. And in the meantime, while we're waiting for Tanisha to log back in, because I want to make sure that we give Tanisha some time because Tanisha's prepared for this meeting, I want to again go over the most common vulnerability armors. And she says no one is immune. If you think that you've never had these armors on at all, you're in for a big surprise, because all of us have had these armors, and they have started to take shape ever since we were in our when we were 11, 12, 13, when we're starting to use these masks, these shields, in order to fit in with peers, in order to interact with those in our school or high school. And so these are the most common shields. So anyway, Tanisha, if you don't mind, I'm going to bring it to the big screen. And if you can unmute yourself, even though we cannot see you, Tanisha, we'd love to hear your takeaways. We'd love to hear your actionable ideas, and we'd love to hear your stories. So go ahead, Tanisha.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. It's good to see everybody, even if you can't see me. I'm having technical difficulties, and I'm on my mom's computer, and I don't know what's going on with this. Her settings are different for a 7-year-old woman. So, but it's great to be here. I love what Dr. Becky said about what she shared, and it kind of ties into what I saw in the book. She mentioned making a picture memory with her daughter. They went to the park. Did you guys discuss this? Because I was trying to get in.
I love that part of the book.
Okay, so they went to the park and they were feeding the ducks, and they were in a paddle boat, and her daughter had closed her eyes. She was 6 years old at the time, and Brene was like, "What's going on?" And her daughter told her, "I am making a picture memory, and it's a picture I take in my mind when I'm really happy. And I take a picture, so when I'm feeling sad or scared or lonely, I can look at my picture memory." And that's great because it ties into joy, because joy comes to us in those small, ordinary moments. And it also ties into what she said about being grateful for what you have. So imagine as adults that we take picture memories of the ordinary, hanging out with your children, your spouse, or just your family. And when those times come, you bring it back up to make you happy again. And that's something that we can all do. So I really was touched by that.
Wow, that was such a beautiful picture. And wasn't that the part where she was talking about the armor of foreboding joy and people brace
Yes,
themselves for disaster, and then that they sort of not sort of, they sabotage the joy that the fullness of the joy they could be experiencing by this foreboding joy and thinking of what could happen, what's the next thing that could happen, when is the other shoe going to drop. And so they were, instead of enjoying the moment, they
yes.
were thinking negative. And so what that picture memory that you talked about, Tanisha, have you ever done that, or has that struck you, or is that your actionable idea going forward?
Well, yes, it is my actionable idea. I actually do it. It does work. I didn't call it a picture memory, but it does work. And Dr. Becky's talked about perfectionism. And one of the things that Brene Brown says, like, whenever you're on this continuum, if we want freedom from perfectionism, we have to make the long journey from what will people think to, like Dr. Becky said, I am enough. And one of the things she mentioned is having compassion. Excuse me. A lot of times we're very hard on ourselves, and there's that voice in our head that really, is not so kind to ourselves. So she said, practice self-kindness. Change that voice in your head and make it warm and understanding, and then you'll feel better. Don't time. So be more kind to yourself and be more compassionate.
That's so powerful, Tanisha. Thank you so much. So, Tanisha, feel free to, just interject if you have anything else to share, because I love hearing what you have to share, and I love that picture memory. And I believe that I'm going to start teaching my children to do that because that is such a powerful, that's a powerful takeaway from the book, folks. Again, this is the book we are talking about, Daring Greatly by Brene Brown, and the subtitle is How the Courage to be Vulnerable Transforms the Way We Live, Love, Parent, and Lead. And she even talks about how men experience shame, and how, because in companies, when managers are, they don't allow people to make mistakes, or they don't allow a culture of where innovations are welcomed. Anybody who has an innovation, or who has a creative idea, or who has some feedback, they shame those employees, they shame those team members, instead of saying, that's really good feedback, or that's an amazing innovative idea, why don't we explore that. And so I really believe that when managers get a hold of this book, and when they cultivate in the workplace an atmosphere where people are free to just share ideas without having to feel shamed, or without having to feel judged, or without having to feel like they have to prove themselves, or without having to feel like they always have to be perfect, then that really fosters an environment of creativity, like Steve was talking about. Creativity, that's when innovation blossoms, that's when there's synergy. And so I really believe that this book is powerful, not just for our personal lives, but for the marketplace as well. So Steve, can you speak to that? And Tanisha, I'm going to give all of you the final word. Steve, can you speak to that as far as innovation and creativity, please?
Absolutely. First of all, one of the things that and it's actually kind of in response to your comment about the need for this in corporations or businesses, and also in schools, is that I think we're all true believers of what Brene Brown is sharing here. It's still not the norm. It's not the what we typically experience in our cultures, in our schools and business and so forth. But by embracing it ourselves, then we can be part of that force that shift in the culture that we're involved in. And to go lead into creativity and innovation is that in order to create any kind of shift, is that it requires creativity and innovation, and it requires us being able to be vulnerable, to being able to step out of our comfort zone, and not only just our own comfort zone, but to step out of the cultural comfort zone in order to stand up for being a different way of being, a more authentic and vulnerable way of being with one another. But it requires courage and conviction in order to do that.
Indeed, indeed so. Indeed so.
I'm commitment to be that space that that others can have that space as well. So I hope that each of us, listening and otherwise,
yeah, indeed. You were breaking up just at the very last, but I really got what you're saying, Steve, where you really hope that people take this to heart and really cultivate an atmosphere where they can, people who are creative and people who are innovative can flourish and grow and be able to share without feeling condemned or being put down or being shunned or being cast aside or being pushed away, or no, let's not break up the status quo, let's just stay where we are. So I'm going to give everyone the final word. Dr. Becky, do you have any final thoughts, please, ma'am?
Just unmute. Well, oh, there's Tanisha. Wow, love it. We got her. I'm just drinking in, to tell you the truth, what you all are saying. I mean, it's just more for me, the creativity and the vulnerability and how it works together. I'm just thinking of, oh my gosh, there's so much that can be done. Instead of trying to make things perfect, we are actually, when we're trying to move into perfectionism, we're blocking our creativity. I mean, that's what I got from Steve. Really, it's like, now you're free, go. So I thought that was an excellent point, and what Tanisha shared about on the imaging, of a picture, a moment, and on the opposite reverse side of that for me is, I thought, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen? And then I just work myself up. It's like, okay, well, I can handle that. And then I'm surprised. It's like, well, wait a minute, I can do that. I can do that. And it's kind of an opposite perspective, but it's you're walking out of perfectionism. You're walking out of where you're walking into vulnerability. So I just want to release to the listeners, you guys, learn how to feel your feelings, for one, acknowledge, stay mindful about your numbing behaviors, be aware of it. Mine is white cake. I love white cake. I will go to any wedding in the world to have a piece of white cake. My husband knows that. My family knows this. I don't know what the deal is, but I don't like lemon cake. I want my white cake. So that might be, I've got doctors here as well, numbing that I'm going through. But yeah, that's a family issue. I won't go down that lane of where I'll go to a wedding and take the cake. Learning how to lean into discomfort or hard emotions. I mean, that's a tough curve. That's a tough one. But again, what you guys are sharing, and you don't have to be perfect. And here's my, it's, in fact, you don't want to be perfect. You want to grow and you want to learn. So those are my takeaways. And
wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Becky. And I want to I want to ask Tanisha if you have any final thoughts now that you're on camera. Hi, Tanisha. Welcome. Good to see you.
Oh, hi. It's great to finally be on. I guess prayer really does work. So I just pray, like, Lord, please let me on. And the camera popped up. I love what Dr. Becky shared. When I was reading about pain, when she says we numb our pain, I think my mentor said, Carrie Overbrunner said, when you numb your pain, you numb your potential. And that's powerful, because a lot of times we do numb our pains and we're numbing our potential. And I think that's part of the reason why I'm actually writing my book, because I'm not going to numb the pain. I want to just explore that potential. And keeping it with the joy the joy just really captured my attention, because when I think about joy, I think about a four-letter word. Somebody once said that a man can live with 4 weeks without food, 4 days without water, 4 minutes without air, but we can't live 4 seconds without this, and it's hope. So when I think of joy, I think of hope, because without hope, you can't have joy. And I think that goes hand in hand, because hope is like a dream that you believe will come to pass, and you expect a promise to come to pass. And to have hope is to know that things will get better. So it's always important to have hope, so you know that things will get better.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Tanisha. Steve, I want to give you an opportunity for the final word, please. Can you unmute yourself? There you go. Oh, it got muted again. There you go.
Am I unmuted now?
You're good.
Okay. My final thoughts on where we're at. It just, the thing that I shared from video was just that, in order to have revolutionary ideas, in order to do things that take us from, where we're at right now to, not just, but to a whole new field, a whole new way of being, takes a lot of courage. We need to be willing to be courageous, to be able to face that pain that Tanisha was talking about. That there is discomfort from being vulnerable, but it's okay. It's okay to difficulty in order to get what we really want, and to create what we really want to create. You don't learn how to paint a masterpiece in one day.
Very true. Very true. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Steve. And I want to read to you one last thing from chapter 4. And here's the difference between, something that's numbing or something that's wholesome. And here's what Brene does. For me, sitting down to a wonderful meal is nourishment and pleasure. Eating while I'm standing, be it in front of the refrigerator or inside the pantry, is always a red flag. Sitting down to watch one of my favorite shows on television is pleasure. Flipping through channels for an hour is numbing. So it's really not what we do, or not what you do, or not what I do, but it's why you do it and why I do it that makes the difference. So now I'm going to be much more aware about why I do things, to make sure, again, that I am not numbing myself. And I'm going to ask myself the question, is this question: are my choices comforting and nourishing my spirit, or are they temporary reprieves from vulnerability and difficult emotions, ultimately diminishing my spirit? Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I am so grateful for everyone who is here with me, my special co-hosts. Thank you so much, Dr. Becky. I really appreciate all the insights that you shared, and the stories and the actionable ideas. Thank you so much, Tanisha, for pressing through and making sure that you shared with us your heart and sharing your what you took away and your actionable ideas. And thank you, Steve, for being here. I'm so honored that you're here. Again, your masculine voice really brings such a different, amazing perspective. So thank you, folks, for joining us. Look forward to seeing you again next week, where we complete chapter 4 and where we talk about the less frequented shelves in the armory. Hope that you get transformed more and more as we dive in and go and live a life of significance and leave your legendary legacy. Thanks so much, folks. Have a blessed day. Goodbye.